In the plants unit, we will take a closer look at how plants grow, from making observations at the macroscopic scale to looking deep inside at the processes happening at the cellular, molecular, and even the atomic level. We all know that plants grow, but have you ever asked how plants grow? Where do they get the stuff to build new plant material? Where does the mass of a plant come from? In the plants unit, we will conduct an investigation to help us explain how plants grow. And we will use the 3 questions, including the movement question, the carbon question, and the energy question, to help us understand what our evidence is telling us about how plants grow. So how can we measure plant growth? This is a real brain teaser. When we talk about plants growing, we often mean that they grow taller or stronger, or that they have more leaves. But measuring height and strength or counting leaves doesn't really help us think about where the matter comes from for the plant to grow. This is why we use the 3 questions to focus our thinking. Look at the movement question on the 3 questions poster. Where are atoms moving from, and where are atoms going to? Now look over to the connecting atoms to evidence column. It says when materials change mass, atoms are moving. To figure out where atoms are moving, that is, where the stuff that is contributing to the plant's mass is coming from, we'll start by measuring the change in mass of our plants and the change in mass of some of the stuff around our plants. This will help us figure out how plants grow. Unfortunately, measuring how a plant changes mass as it grows is challenging. Why? Plants are mostly made up of water. Think about this. If you stand on a scale, then pick up and drink a big glass of water, will your mass increase? Yes, because you added the mass of the water to your body. But did you grow? Drinking the water made you add mass, so you know water molecules were moving from the glass to your body, but we don't really think about that as growing. Growth is not a very scientifically precise term. In carbon time, we think of growth as a measure of how living things add matter to build more parts and build larger parts. In the animation you're seeing, the water molecules are moving through the plant, but they aren't being added to the plant's body. We will be growing seeds into radish plants. Both the seeds and the gel crystals will absorb a lot of water, but the seeds aren't just absorbing water. They're really growing. So how can we measure the growth of a plant in a way that separates out the water? To help us think about the problem, let's first consider one of the materials we'll use in the investigation. The clear gel-like material in which our plants will take root starts out as dry crystals. These crystals are pretty neat. They can absorb water. Lots of water. What do you think? Are the crystals growing? Remember, growth is not a very precise term, so you might argue either way. But the crystals did gain mass by absorbing water, meaning atoms that make up water, H2O molecules, were moving into the gel crystals. So if water makes things gain mass but doesn't make them grow, and we want to figure out how plants grow, how do we measure just the dry stuff in wet mixtures? Let's try massing our dry and wet crystals on a scale. First, find the mass of the empty container, or tare. Then, add the dry crystals. Once you have the total mass, subtract the tare from the total mass to find the mass of just the crystals. This number is the crystal dry mass. Now let's find out what happens to the mass when we hydrate the crystals with water to make a mixture. The mass of the crystals are now much more. Water molecules have added mass, wet mass, to the mixture. Once we know both the total mass of a mixture and its dry mass, we can calculate the percent dry mass. Then we can use the percent dry mass to estimate the solid mass in any amount of the gel mixture. For example, the dry crystal mass in test tubes of gel in which you will grow your plants. In this example, we started out with a dried substance, then added water to make a mixture. But what if we start with a mixture? How do we know how much dry mass it contains? Let's use the gel again to consider this problem. How can we find out how much dry mass is in this mixture? First, let's find its mass. Next, using the dry mass percentage we calculated in the first example, let's estimate how much dry mass is in the mixture. We estimate there are 0.24 grams of dry crystals in the mixture. Now let's test if our estimate accurately predicts how much dry mass is in this mixture by taking the water out of the mixture or evaporating it and finding the mass of what's left. Again, we can calculate the percent dry mass, which gives us exactly the same results as before. This example shows us that another way to measure dry mass in a mixture is to dehydrate it or take the water out of the mixture. So why does this matter? Let's think again about our growing plants. Now we know how to measure or estimate just the dry mass of a mixture. We know plants are mixtures and that we're not interested in measuring the water they contain because water doesn't measure growth. But what is the dry stuff in plants that we're trying to measure as we investigate how plants grow? Let's look back at the 3 questions. In carbon time, we're interested in tracing carbon atoms to explain how plants transform matter and energy as they grow. Molecules containing carbon make up the matter that the plants gain to make bigger or more leaves, stems, and roots. We will measure the dry mass of our plants both before and after they grow, keeping track of the dry mass in the seeds and the gel when we plant, how much dry mass is in the nutrient mixture that we'll use to give the plants water, and how much dry mass is in the plants and the gel after the plants have grown. Through our plant unit investigation, we'll use this information we collect about mass changes in our plant system to figure out how much of our plant's mass gain is from an increase in molecules containing carbon. This will be one important piece of evidence that will help us answer the 3 questions and the overall question of how do plants grow. So let's get started.